The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and regret. A sterile cage for a boy who'd done nothing but be himself. 17-year-old Eli Carter lay bruised and broken, his rainbow pride pin glinting defiantly on the bedside table. A silent rebellion against the cruelty that put him here. His father, Jack Carter, a man whose hands had once held badges and guns, stood by the window, fists clenched, watching the world outside that had failed his son. Eli's breaths were shallow, each one a reminder of the night before when a simple walk home from the library turned into a nightmare. He'd worn that pin, a small act of courage in their small Ohio town, where pride flags were still whispered about like scandals. Two cops, emboldened by the town's unspoken rules, had seen it as a challenge. "Faggot," one sneered, before their batons met Eli's ribs. The memory burned in Jack's chest, a fire stoked by guilt and rage. He'd taught Eli to stand tall, to be proud, but he hadn't prepared him for this. Jack turned from the window, his gray eyes locking onto his son's pale face. Eli was awake now, his hazel eyes flickering with a mix of fear and defiance. "Dad," he whispered, voice cracking. They didn't even ask questions. "Just hit me." Jack's jaw tightened. He'd spent 20 years as a federal agent, upholding the law, believing in it. Now, the law had betrayed his son, and the weight of that betrayal was heavier than any badge. The town of Willow Creek was a postcard of Americana white picket fences, Friday night football, and a church on every corner. But beneath its charm lay a current of intolerance, a quiet agreement to keep certain truths in the shadows. Eli had always been different, a quiet kid who loved books and art, who came out at 15 with a courage Jack admired but never fully understood. Jack had accepted his son, loved him fiercely, but he'd hoped the world would too. Last night proved him wrong. The hospital door creaked open, and Dr. Patel stepped in, her face a mask of professional calm. "He's stable," she said, glancing at Eli's chart. "Fractured ribs. Concussion. But he'll recover. Physically, at least." The unspoken hung heavy. Eli's spirit was another matter. Jack nodded, his voice low. "Thanks, Doc. Can we have a minute?" She left, and Jack sat beside Eli, his calloused hand covering his son's smaller one. "Eli, I'm sorry," Jack said, the words rough, like they'd been torn from him. "I should have been there." Eli shook his head, wincing at the movement. "You couldn't know, Dad. I wanted to be me." His voice broke, and Jack felt something crack inside him too. He'd spent his career taking down cartels and con men, but he couldn't protect his son from a couple of small-town cops with too much power and too little heart. The police station was a squat brick building, its flagpole casting a long shadow as Jack parked his truck that afternoon. He'd left Eli with his sister, Sarah, who'd flown in from Chicago, her lawyer's mind already spinning with plans for justice. Jack wasn't here for justice, not yet. He wanted answers. The receptionist, a nervous woman named Linda, recognized him from his days on the force. "Jack, I'm so sorry about Eli," she stammered, but he waved her off, heading straight for the chief's office. Chief Dan Hargrove was a barrel of a man, his desk cluttered with coffee mugs and case files. He stood as Jack entered, offering a hand that Jack ignored. "Jack, I heard what happened." "We're investigating," Jack cut him off, his voice low and dangerous. "Investigating? Your boys beat my son half to death for a pin. Dan." "A pin?" Hargrove's face reddened, but he held Jack's gaze. "It's complicated, Jack. The officers Tom and Ray say Eli provoked them." "Provoked?" Jack's laugh was bitter. "He's a kid, Dan. 17. reading poetry, and wearing a damn rainbow. That's not provocation, that's living. Hargrove sighed, rubbing his temples. Look, I know you're angry. But we've got procedures. Internal affairs will handle it. Jack leaned forward, his voice ablade. You know me, Dan. You know I don't wait for procedures when it's my family. Back at the hospital, Eli was sitting up, sketching in a notebook Sarah had brought him. His drawings were of cityscapes, vibrant and free, a world where he could be himself without fear. Sarah, her auburn hair pulled back, sat beside him, her phone buzzing with messages from colleagues offering legal support. We'll sue them blind. Eli, she said, her voice fierce. Eli smiled faintly, but his eyes were distant. I just wanted to stop. Aunt Sarah. For everyone. Jack returned, his face a storm cloud. He told them about Hargrove's excuses, the thin veil of procedure that protected the guilty. Sarah's eyes narrowed. We need evidence. Jack. Witnesses. Footage. Anything. Jack nodded, his mind already racing. He'd spent years building cases, finding cracks and lies. This time, it wasn't just a Casey, it was personal. That night, Jack sat in his truck outside the station, watching officers come and go. Tom and Ray, the two who'd hurt Eli, were still on duty, laughing as they left their shift. Jack's hands tightened on the steering wheel, every instinct screaming to confront them. But he wasn't that man anymore. He'd left the badge behind for a reason. Violence wasn't the answer. Not yet. Instead, he drove to the library where it happened, a quiet brick building with a flickering street lamp. The alley beside it was where Eli had been cornered. Jack knelt, his flashlight sweeping the ground. A glint caught his eye, a button from a police uniform, half buried in the dirt. He pocketed it, his pulse quickening. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next morning, Jack sat at his kitchen table, the button in a plastic bag beside a cup of black coffee gone cold. Sarah was already on her laptop, digging through public records and local news. The departments had complaints before, she said, her voice clipped. Tom's been written up twice for excessive force. Ray's newer, but he's got a reputation for following Tom's lead. Jack nodded, his mind piecing together a plan. He wasn't just a dad, now was a hunter, and the truth was his prey. Eli was released from the hospital that afternoon, moving slowly, his ribs still tender. Jack drove him home, the silence between them heavy but not uncomfortable. Eli clutched his sketchbook, his pride pinned back on his jacket. You don't have to wear it, Jack said softly, glancing at him. Eli's jaw set. I'm not hiding, Dad. Not after this. Jack's chest swelled with pride and fear, a tangled knot he couldn't unravel. At home, their small ranch house felt like a fortress under siege. Neighbors had left casseroles and cards, but Jack saw the pity in their eyes, the unspoken judgment. Willow Creek wasn't ready for a kid like Eli, and that truth cut deeper than any baton. Sarah set up a command center in the living room, her legal pads filled with notes. We need a witness, she said. Someone who saw what happened in that alley. Jack's mind went to the library's security camera. He'd noticed it last night, angled toward the alley. He called the librarian, Mrs. Thompson, a kind woman who'd always let Eli linger after hours. Jack, I'm so sorry, she said, her voice trembling. The camera's footage is stored for a week. But the police already asked for it. Jack's stomach dropped. Did they take it? He asked. Mrs. Thompson hesitated. They asked, but I made a copy first. For Eli. By noon, Jack had the footage on a USB drive. He and Sarah watched it in silence. The grainy video showing Eli walking alone, his head down, the pride pin catching the light. Then Tom and Ray appeared, their voices muffled but their intent clear. "Take it off, kid," Tom barked. Eli's refusal was quiet but firm. And then the first blow came. Sarah gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Jack's vision blurred with rage, but he forced himself to stay calm. This was evidence undeniable, damning evidence. Sarah called a friend at a local news station, a reporter named Carla who'd covered civil rights cases before. "This could blow up," Carla said over the phone, her voice cautious but intrigued. "But it's risky. The town's divided, and the police have allies." Jack didn't care about the town's politics. He cared about Eli, about the kids like him who walked these streets afraid. That evening, Eli joined them in the living room, his face pale but determined. "I want to tell my story," he said, his voice stronger than Jack expected. "Not just for me, but for others." Sarah nodded, but Jack hesitated. "It'll get ugly, Eli. People here, they're not all kind." Eli met his gaze, unflinching. "I know, Dad. But I'm not the only one they've hurt." Jack spent the night digging into Tom and Ray's records, using old contacts from his agency days. A former colleague, Mike, still had access to databases Jack couldn't touch anymore. "Tom's got a history," Mike said over a secure line. "Suspended once for roughing up a protester at a pride event in Columbus. Ray's his shadow does whatever Tom says." Jack thanked him, the button in his pocket feeling heavier by the minute. The next day, Carla met them at a coffee shop on the edge of town. She watched the footage, her expression hardening. "This is big, Jack. But we need more than video. We need context, witnesses, a narrative." Jack handed her a list of names other kids who'd been harassed by Tom and Ray. Stories whispered in high school hallways but never reported. Carla's eyes lit up. This isn't just about Eli. It's about a pattern. Back home, Eli was sketching again, this time a portrait of a boy who looked like him, standing tall under a rainbow flag. Jack watched him, marveling at his son's resilience. "You're stronger than I ever was," he said quietly. Eli looked up, surprised. "You're fighting for me, Dad. That's strength." Jack swallowed hard, the weight of his son's words settling deep. Carla's story hit the local news the next evening, a 5-minute segment that shook Willow Creek like a fault line. The footage, carefully edited to protect Eli's identity, showed enough to spark outrage. Social media erupted, with hashtags like Justice for Eli trending locally. But not everyone was on their side. Outside the Carter house, a group of protesters gathered, their signs condemning sin and deviance. Jack stood on the porch, his presence a silent warning. But inside, Eli flinched at every shout. Sarah was relentless, filing a formal complaint with the state's attorney general and reaching out to advocacy groups. "We're building a case," she told Jack, her eyes bloodshot from late nights. "But we need to keep Eli safe." Jack had already installed new locks and a security system, his old instincts kicking in. He wasn't just protecting Eli from physical harm, was shielding him from the town's venom. At school, Eli faced whispers and stares. Some classmates left supportive notes in his locker, but others scrawled slurs on his desk. His best friend, Mia, a fierce 16-year-old with dyed purple hair, became his shadow, deflecting the worst of the taunts. "They're just scared of what they don't understand," she told him, her voice steady. Eli nodded, but the weight of it all was crushing him. He kept sketching, his art a lifeline to a world where he wasn't a target. Jack met with Carlo again, this time at a diner far from Willow Creek's prying eyes. She'd found a witness, a delivery driver named Luis who'd seen the attack from his van. "He's scared," Carla said, stirring her coffee. "Says Tom threatened him to stay quiet." Jack's jaw clenched. "Get him to talk. I'll make sure he's safe." Carla nodded, but her eyes were wary. "This is bigger than two cops, Jack. The whole department's complicit if they're covering this up." Luis agreed to meet at a park that night, his hands shaking as he handed Jack a written statement. "I saw everything," he said, his voice low. "Eli didn't do anything. They just went at him." Jack thanked him, slipping him a burner phone with Mike's number. "If you feel unsafe, call this. We'll get you out." Luis nodded, his eyes darting to the shadows. The next day, Sarah filed a lawsuit against the Willow Creek Police Department, naming Tom and Ray specifically. The news spread like wildfire, and the town split further. Some rallied behind Eli, organizing a small vigil outside the library. Others doubled down, calling it a witch hunt against good cops. Jack watched it all, his heart torn between pride in his son's courage and fear of what it would cost. Eli started therapy, a quiet woman named Dr. Rivera who specialized in trauma. She helped him process the attack, but also the deeper wounds, the years of feeling less than in a town that didn't understand him. "You're not defined by their hate," she told him. Eli nodded, but the words felt hollow when he saw the protesters outside his window. Jack's investigation deepened. He found another witness, a homeless man named Eddie who'd been in the alley that night. Eddie was reluctant, his trust in authority long gone, but Jack's honesty won him over. "I saw the kid go down," Eddie said, his voice rough. "They laughed, man, like it was a game." Jack's blood boiled, but he kept his focus, recording Eddie's statement on his phone. By the end of the week, the pressure was mounting. The state's attorney general announced an investigation into the Willow Creek PD, and Tom and Ray were suspended pending review. Jack knew it wasn't enough. Suspensions could be lifted, records scrubbed. He needed something bigger, something that would make the whole town see the truth. The town hall meeting was a powder keg. Jack stood at the back, arms crossed, watching as residents packed the room, their voices a mix of support and fury. Eli sat beside Sarah, his pride pin gleaming under the fluorescent lights. He'd insisted on coming, despite Jack's protests. "I need to face them," Eli said, his voice steady but his hands trembling. Jack couldn't argue with that kind of courage. The mayor, a nervous man named Greg Larson, tried to keep order, but the crowd was restless. A woman in a red scarf stood, her voice shaking with anger. "Those officers were protecting our values. This boy provoked them." Murmurs of agreement rippled through half the room. Then Mia stood, her purple hair a beacon of defiance. Eli was attacked for being himself. "If that's your values, they're garbage." The room erupted, and Jack's hand twitched toward the gun he no longer carried. Sarah took the podium, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This isn't just about my nephew. It's about a system that lets officers brutalize kids without consequence. We have evidence video, witnesses, a pattern of abuse." She held up the USB drive, and the room fell silent. "Willow Creek can do better. We have to." Eli's eyes shone with pride, and Jack felt a flicker of hope amidst the anger. After the meeting, Jack drove Eli home, the silence heavy with unspoken fears. "You were brave tonight," Jack said finally. Eli shrugged, staring out the window. "I just want to feel normal again, Dad. Like I'm not a headline." Jack gripped the wheel, wishing he could give his son that peace. But normal was a luxury they'd lost the moment those batons swung. Carla's next story aired nationally, picked up by a major network. The footage, paired with Luis and Eddie's statements, painted a damning picture. Protests grew, with college students from nearby cities joining Willow Creek's youth outside the police station. Jack watched from his truck, his heart torn between pride and dread. The world was watching now, but so were Tom and Ray's allies. Late that night, Jack got a call from Mike. "Found something," he said, his voice tense. "Tom's got a cousin in the mayor's office. Been feeding him info, maybe even wiping complaints." Jack's pulse quickened. "Can you prove it?" Mike hesitated. "Working on it." "But Jack, be careful. These guys play dirty." Jack hung up, his mind racing. He'd faced cartels with less to lose than these small-town power brokers. Eli started a blog, pouring his heart into posts about being gay in a place like Willow Creek. His words were raw, honest, and they spread fast. Kids from across the country commented, sharing their own stories of fear and hope. "You're not alone," Eli wrote back, his fingers flying over the keyboard. Jack read every post, marveling at his son's ability to turn pain into connection. Sarah's lawsuit gained traction, with more witnesses coming forward. A barista named Chloe said she'd seen Tom harass a trans teen last year. A teacher admitted to hearing Ray brag about teaching queers a lesson. Each story was a brick in the case, but also a reminder of how deep the rot ran. Jack met with the Attorney General's investigator, a sharp woman named Rachel who listened intently to his findings. "You're doing good work, Jack," she said. "But this could take months." Jack nodded, but months felt like a lifetime when Eli woke up screaming from nightmares. The first threat came in a plain envelope, slipped under Jack's door. "Back off, or the kid pays." No signature, just block letters on cheap paper. Jack burned it in the backyard, but the words lingered. He didn't tell Eli, but he doubled the security cameras and started sleeping with a baseball bat by his bed. Sarah noticed his tension, her lawyer's instincts sharp. "We're hitting a nerve, Jack." "That's good." "And dangerous." Eli's blog was gaining attention, with advocacy groups reaching out to amplify his voice. He spoke at a virtual rally, his face pixelated for safety, but his words clear. "I wore a pride pin because I'm proud of who I am. They tried to break me, but I'm still here." The crowd cheered, and Jack watched from the kitchen, his throat tight. Eli was becoming a symbol, but all Jack wanted was his son, safe and whole. Carla uncovered more dirt, a paper trail linking Tom's cousin in the mayor's office to deleted police reports. "It's corruption, Jack," she said over coffee, her voice low. "But we need hard proof to tie it to the attack." Jack nodded, his mind already on his next move. He'd found an old informant, a hacker named Zoe, who owed him a favor. She was risky, but she could dig where others couldn't. Zoe met Jack in a dive bar, her laptop glowing in the dim light. "Got something," she said, sliding a USB drive across the table. Emails between Tom's cousin and the chief. They knew about the complaints and buried them. Jack's heart pounded. This was the break they needed, but it came with a cost. Zoe's hands shook as she spoke. "They're watching you, Jack. Be careful." The protests grew louder, with rainbow flags waving outside the police station. Eli joined one, against Jack's wishes, standing beside Mia with his pride pin gleaming. A counter-protester shoved him, but Mia pushed back, her voice fierce. "Touch him again, and you'll regret it." Jack watched from across the street, ready to intervene, but Eli held his ground, his eyes blazing with defiance. Sarah's team filed a motion to subpoena the mayor's office records, citing the new evidence. The judge, A stern woman named Harper granted it, but warned of delays. "This is a small town," she said. "Tread carefully." Jack didn't care about careful. He cared about justice, about making sure no other kids suffered like Eli. That night, Eli sat Jack down, his sketchbook open to a drawing of them together, standing under a rainbow. "Dad, I know you're scared for me," he said. "But this fight, it's bigger than us. I need to do this." Jack nodded, his voice rough. "I know, kid. I'm with you." Eli hugged him, and for the first time since the attack, Jack felt like they might win. The subpoena hit like a bomb. The mayor's office scrambled, releasing a statement about transparency that fooled no one. Jack and Sarah pored over the records, finding gaps where complaints against Tom and Ray should have been. Zoe's emails filled in the blanks, proof of a cover-up that reached the chief himself. Sarah's eyes gleamed. "This is it, Jack. We've got them." The trial date was set, but the threats escalated. A brick crashed through Jack's window, a note tied to it, "Leave town or else." Eli saw it before Jack could hide it, his face paling. "Dad, maybe we should stop." Jack knelt before him, his voice steady. "We stop, they win. And they don't get to win, Eli. Not this time." Carla's next story named the mayor's cousin, sparking a firestorm. The man resigned within hours, but the damage was done. The town's power structure was crumbling, and Jack felt the weight of every step they took. He met with Rachel again, handing over Zoe's evidence. "This better hold up in court," she said, her tone grim. Jack nodded. "It will." Eli's blog became a beacon, with thousands of followers sharing his posts. He wrote about fear, about love, about the pride pin he still wore every day. "It's not just a pin," he wrote. "It's a promise to myself to live without shame." Jack read it and felt a tear slip down his cheek, the first in years. The protests grew, with national advocacy groups joining the fight. A rally outside the courthouse drew hundreds, their signs demanding justice. Eli spoke again, his voice stronger now, amplified by a microphone. "I'm not just fighting for me," he said. "I'm fighting for every kid who's scared to be themselves." The crowd roared, and Jack stood beside Sarah, his heart swelling. Tom and Ray's suspension became a termination, but Jack knew it wasn't enough. The trial would decide their fate, and the town's. Sarah prepped Eli for the stand, warning him of the defense's tactics. "They'll try to paint you as a troublemaker," she said. Eli nodded, his jaw set. "Let them try. I know who I am." Jack's old instincts kicked in, and he started tailing Tom, watching from a distance. The man was unraveling, drinking heavily at a bar on the edge of town. Jack didn't trust himself to stay calm. Instead, he noted every move, every contact, building a case in his mind like he'd done for years. The night before the trial, Eli sat with Jack on the porch, the stars bright above them. "Dad, whatever happens, I'm glad we're doing this together." Jack pulled him close, his voice thick. "Always, kid. Always." The courtroom was a pressure cooker, every seat filled with supporters and detractors. Eli took the stand, his pride pin gleaming, his voice steady despite the bruises still fading on his face. Sarah's questions were sharp, guiding him through the night of the attack with precision. "Why did you wear the pin?" she asked. Eli's eyes met Jack's. "Because I'm proud of who I am. And no one gets to take that away." The defense lawyer, a slick man named Carter, tried to twist Eli's words, painting him as defiant, a provocateur. "You refused to remove the pin when asked. Correct." He pressed. Eli didn't flinch. It's not a crime to be myself. The room buzzed, and Jack gripped the bench, his pride in Eli warring with his urge to shield him. Sarah called Luis and Eddie next, their testimonies painting a vivid picture of the attack. The video played on a large screen, the room silent except for the muffled thuds of batons. A juror wiped her eyes, and Jack knew they'd scored a point. But the defense wasn't done. They called Tom, who claimed Eli had threatened him, a lie so blatant it made Jack's blood boil. Rachel presented the emails, linking the cover-up to the chief and the mayor's office. The judge's expression darkened, and the room felt the shift. The prosecution rested, and Jack allowed himself a moment of hope. But hope was fragile, and Willow Creek's old guard wasn't done fighting. Outside the courthouse, protesters clashed, rainbow flags meeting signs of hate. Mia stood with Eli, her arm around him, while Jack scanned the crowd for threats. A man in a trucker hat spat at Eli's feet, and Jack stepped forward, his voice low. "Walk away. Now." The man did, but the encounter left Eli shaken. "Why do they hate me so much?" he asked later, his voice small. Jack had no answer, only a hug. Sarah's closing argument was a masterpiece, her voice ringing with conviction. This case isn't just about Eli Carter. It's about every child who deserves to live without fear. It's about a town that can choose justice over hate. The jury deliberated, and Jack waited, his heart in his throat. Eli sketched in the hallway, his pencil moving furiously, creating a world where he was free. The verdict came after 3 agonizing days, guilty on all counts for Tom and Ray, with additional charges against the chief for obstruction. The courtroom erupted, cheers mixing with boos. Eli hugged Sarah, then Jack, his tears soaking into his father's shirt. "We did it, Dad," he whispered. Jack nodded, but he knew the fight wasn't over. The aftermath was a storm of change. Tom and Ray were sentenced to prison, their badges stripped, their names synonymous with shame. The chief resigned, and the mayor lost his re-election bid to a progressive candidate who promised reform. Willow Creek was no longer the same town, and neither was Jack. Eli's blog became a book deal, his story reaching kids across the country. He spoke at schools, his pride pinned a constant, his voice stronger with every word. "You are enough," he told them, and Jack watched, marveling at the man his son was becoming. Mia was by his side, her friendship a rock in the chaos. Jack started a foundation in Eli's name, funding legal aid for kids facing discrimination. Sarah ran it, her lawyer's heart finding purpose in the fight. The library alley became a mural, painted by Eli and local artists, a rainbow bursting with color and hope. The town didn't heal overnight, but the cracks were filling with something new. One evening, Jack and Eli sat on the porch, the air cool with autumn's promise. Eli held his sketchbook, now filled with drawings of a future he believed in. "Dad, do you think it was worth it?" he asked. Jack looked at him, his son's eyes bright with life. "Every second, Eli. You changed the world." The pride pin, once a spark of defiance, was now a symbol of victory. Eli wore it to his graduation, where he was valedictorian, his speech a call to love and courage. Jack stood in the crowd, tears streaming, knowing he'd never been prouder. Willow Creek wasn't perfect, but it was trying, and that was enough for now. As they walked home under the stars, Eli took Jack's hand, something he hadn't done since he was a child. "Thanks, Dad," he said simply. Jack squeezed his hand, his voice thick. "Always, kid. Always." The town still whispered, but the whispers were softer now, drowned out by the voices of those who'd found their courage. Eli's pin gleamed in the moonlight, a beacon for anyone who dared to be themselves. And Jack, once a man of badges and guns, knew his greatest mission had been fighting for his son.